I've always known rest areas can feel eerie after midnight. But one Wyoming stop told me something was very wrong. A young woman lay hidden near the bushes, and the only other person there was a trucker parked under a flickering street lamp. Had he been waiting for someone to discover what was hidden? It happened a few years ago. I drove my rig off the interstate just after midnight, rolling into a quiet rest area along a lonely stretch of highway in eastern Wyoming. The engine hummed down to a low rumble beneath a tired street lamp that flickered every few seconds. Behind me, the highway ran like a black ribbon through open plains, empty in both directions. I'd been driving nearly 12 hours straight, and fatigue had finally caught up with me. I figured I would stretch my legs, sip some lukewarm coffee from my thermos, and check the straps on the load before heading back out. The rest area was barely more than a wide pull-off, 2 cracked parking spots, a pair of weathered picnic tables, a trash bin rattling softly in the wind. The single orange streetlight painted everything in a dull glow that barely reached the edges of the lot. The place felt wrong the moment I shut off the engine. Too quiet? Another truck sat at the far end of the lot. An old blue Freightliner, paint faded from years on the road. No logo, no numbers, nothing to suggest ownership. The cab was dark and still. I assumed the driver was asleep inside. When I stepped down from my rig, the night air hit sharp and cold. I stretched and walked along the side of the trailer, checking each strap the way I always did. That's when I noticed something at the edge of the pavement. A dark patch glistened faintly under my flashlight. My first thought was oil. Trucks leak all kinds of things. But when I crouched and aimed closer, my stomach tightened. The color looked wrong, darker, thicker. For a moment, I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. Then I noticed a trail leading toward the bushes near the picnic tables. Slowly, I followed the trail until it disappeared beneath a low cluster of branches. That's when I saw the shoe. A white sneaker with a pink stripe. My breath caught. I stepped closer and gently pushed the branches aside. A young woman lay partly hidden beneath the bush, turned slightly on her side. Her eyes were open but unfocused, staring past everything. Clothes rumpled, dusty, completely still. She couldn't have been more than 20. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe she had collapsed. Maybe she had been injured. But my gut told me it was far worse. I backed away quickly, hands shaking as I reached for my phone. No signal. Of course. Out here in the middle of nowhere, service was as reliable as desert rain. My pulse pounded as I glanced around the empty rest stop. "Hello?" I called into the darkness. No answer, only the wind moving through dry grass. I hurried back to my cab, locked the doors, and grabbed the CB microphone. "Breaker 19, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is Silverhawk near mile marker 214 on Highway 80. I need some help. Found someone who looks badly hurt at the rest area." Long seconds passed. Only static answered. Then a voice crackled, low and calm. "Say that again, driver. What did you find?" "A woman," I replied. "She's not moving. I think she needs help." Another pause. Then the voice, slower this time. "You sure she's not just resting?" My grip tightened. "I'm sure something's wrong. If anyone can call it in, I'd appreciate it." Silence. Then the voice. "All right, stay put. I'll take care of it." I looked out of the windshield. The blue Freightliner at the far end of the lot rumbled to life. Engine coughed once before settling. Headlights flashed briefly, then switched off. The driver's door creaked open. A tall, broad-shouldered man climbed down. Flannel shirt over dusty jeans, a baseball cap pulled low, a long, pale scar along his cheek. "You the one on the CB?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, keeping the doors locked. "Did you reach someone?" He nodded, glancing towards the bushes. Yeah, someone's on the way. Then back to me. What exactly did you see? A woman near the bushes, I said carefully. Looks like she collapsed. He scratched his chin thoughtfully. You hear anything earlier? No. Been asleep. Long drive from Arizona, he said, flicking a lighter open briefly. The small flame lit his eyes. These roads get strange after midnight. I forced a nod. Yeah, they do. He glanced toward the darkness beyond the lot. Funny thing, though, he said after a moment. Saw someone walking along the shoulder earlier tonight. My heart jumped. Really? Blonde hair, red jacket, he said slowly. The woman beneath the bush had blonde hair and a red jacket. He must have noticed my expression because he smiled. Not friendly, just slow and deliberate. You all right there? Yeah, I said quickly. Just waiting for help. Well, it might take a while, he said, then walked back toward his truck. Engine idling, lights still off. I felt strongly that he was watching me. I checked my phone. Still no signal. Finally, I turned the key and started my engine. Diesel roared. I eased forward toward the exit. In the mirror, the Freightliner's headlights snapped on, flooding the lot. Over the CB, his voice returned. Where you headed, driver? I'm going to find signal, I said. You didn't move anything back there, did you? No. Good. Best not to disturb things. I pressed harder on the accelerator as the highway stretched ahead. His truck followed close behind, headlights burning bright. Tell me something, he said over the radio. You ever pick up people walking these highways? No, I said quickly. Smart choice. You never really know who you're meeting out here. Far ahead, a cluster of lights appeared. A gas station. I steered toward the exit ramp and rolled into the lot, cars under bright fluorescent lights. 2 bars of signal. I dialed emergency services immediately. This is Daniel, I said. I found a woman at a rest stop off Highway 80 near mile marker 214. She looks badly hurt. There's another truck that followed me from the stop. At the edge of the lot, the blue Freightliner idled briefly, then turned slowly and disappeared onto the dark highway. 20 minutes later, authorities arrived. The rest area had been secured. They confirmed my worst fears. The young woman had passed away before help could reach her. Investigators later told me she matched someone reported missing from another state earlier that week. The truck driver had used a false name. Vehicle details didn't match any registered company. 3 days later, officials located the truck several states away. I pulled my rig onto the shoulder and sat for a long time, thinking about that night, about the empty highway, about the calm voice over the CB asking a simple, chilling question. Are you sure she's not just sleeping? Long-haul truckers follow a simple rule. If another driver asks for help, you stop and lend a hand. One night I met a man whose truck wouldn't start. Helping seemed like the right thing to do. But when I looked inside his cab, I noticed coils of rope, rolls of duct tape, and something else on the floor that didn't belong. The friendly conversation changed immediately, and I realized I might have walked straight into something far more dangerous. The only thought running through my head at the time was, could I get back on the highway before he decided I wasn't leaving? I've been driving long-haul routes for about 12 years, hauling everything from furniture to steel beams, machine parts, and auto parts. After a while, the road becomes routine, the hum of tires, the engine's vibration, headlights cutting through the dark. For drivers who can handle the solitude, it's a good life. But some nights feel different. Sometimes the highway stretches so empty that the world goes silent except for your truck. There's one night I still think about whenever I pull into a quiet rest area. A night that changed the way I look at every unfamiliar truck under a lonely lamp. It started as a routine run from Chicago to Denver. My trailer was loaded with auto parts. I left just after sunset, planning to drive through most of the night before stopping to rest. By the time I crossed into Iowa, the world had turned completely dark. Fields stretched across both sides of the highway like black oceans. The moon hung low behind thin clouds. After several hours behind the wheel, my eyes were burning, my shoulders stiff. I spotted a small roadside rest area and decided to stop. The place looked almost abandoned. A flickering sign leaned at the entrance. A cracked sidewalk led to a squat concrete restroom building. Only 2 trucks were parked. Mine and an older red semi beneath the only working street lamp. I assumed the driver was asleep. I shut down the engine and climbed out, carrying my thermos. The night was quiet, except for the ticking of my cooling motor. Then I heard footsteps. A tall figure approached from the direction of the red truck. Over 6 feet, heavy build, grease-stained jeans, worn flannel, cap casting a shadow over his face. He raised a hand and explained his truck was having trouble starting. He asked if I could take a quick look. Helping another driver is an unwritten rule. So I agreed. He led me to the front of his truck where the hood was open. I leaned in with my flashlight, expecting a loose cable or battery problem. The engine compartment looked unusually clean, cleaner than most rigs on the road. That was the first thing that didn't feel right. The second was a sharp, metallic smell like copper. My flashlight drifted toward the open cab door. Inside, a large duffel bag sat on the passenger seat. The zipper was partly open. Coils of rope spilled onto the seat. Several rolls of duct tape tangled beside them. At first, I told myself it could be normal gear. Truckers carry all kinds of supplies. But there was too much. Behind me, the man spoke again, his voice quieter than before. He asked if I had found anything interesting. I straightened and said it might be a loose connection. When I turned, his expression had changed. The easy smile was gone. He stepped closer, saying there was no reason to rush off. We could keep working together. Something about the calm tone made my skin prickle. I nodded politely and mentioned I had better tools back in my truck. Before I could move, he shifted slightly and blocked the path. His words turned hollow as he talked about picking up hitchhikers to break boredom. He mentioned the last one, a young woman traveling out of Omaha. Curiosity made me glance back inside the cab. My flashlight beam drifted lower. On the floorboard near the passenger seat was a dark, dried stain. Beside it, partly hidden, rested a small shoe, a woman's shoe with its strap torn loose. For a moment, my mind refused to process it. Everything inside me went still. Instinct took over. I said the alternator might be the issue and suggested roadside assistance, then turned toward my truck. A hand grabbed my arm, his grip incredibly strong. He stepped closer, still speaking calmly, like nothing was wrong. I told him to let go. He didn't. Adrenaline surged. I twisted free and ran. Boots pounding the asphalt, I climbed into the cab, slammed the door, and locked it. Engine roared to life as I turned the key. A heavy thud struck the side of the truck. His face flashed against the window before I shifted into gear and pulled out. In my mirrors, he ran back toward the red semi. Moments later, its headlights flared. I was being followed. The next stretch of highway felt like a nightmare. The red truck stayed right behind me, headlights burning in my mirrors. I pushed my truck faster than I ever had. Fear kept my foot on the accelerator. I grabbed the CB microphone and called for anyone listening. I'm explaining that another truck was chasing me, and something felt very wrong. For a moment, there was only static. Then a voice answered. Calm, asking where I was. I told him what I had seen in the cab, and how the driver had tried to stop me from leaving. Another trucker joined the channel, saying he was several miles ahead and would slow down to help. Within minutes, more drivers responded. Voices filled the CB, coordinating like a convoy, even though most of us had never met. Suddenly, the red truck bumped the rear of my trailer. The rig shuddered. The other drivers assured me they were close. Up ahead, 2 trucks began slowing down. They left a narrow opening. I pushed the accelerator and slipped through the gap. The moment I passed, the 2 trucks closed the space behind me. The red semi swerved, trying to get around them, but they held their positions. Then distant sirens echoed across the highway. State troopers arrived minutes later, lights flashing across the dark road. I kept driving until the next exit before finally pulling over. My hands shook so badly I had to sit in the cab for several minutes before stepping out. Later, investigators explained that the driver of the red truck had already been under investigation in several states. Authorities discovered disturbing evidence hidden in compartments behind the cab, personal belongings linked to missing travelers. The shoe I saw was eventually traced to someone who had disappeared along that highway weeks earlier. Even now, years later, I still drive these same routes. Freight still moves through the night, and highways keep stretching across the country. But one part of my routine changed after that night. I don't stop at small, empty rest areas anymore. If I need a break, I look for truck stops filled with bright lights, security cameras, and plenty of other drivers. Because sometimes the loneliest places on the highway are the ones where nobody else is supposed to be watching. Driving across the desert at night can make even experienced truckers uneasy. But one night, while hauling a trailer full of expensive electronics, I started getting strange messages over my CB radio. A voice kept calling me by name, describing details about my truck that no stranger should have known. At first I thought it was just another driver messing around. Then headlights appeared behind me on the empty highway. The voice on the radio started making demands. And I realized something chilling. Whoever was talking to me might have been watching me for a long time. It happened about 10 years ago during a westbound run across the desert. My trailer was packed with high-end electronics, sealed, and headed for Phoenix. Expensive freight had a way of attracting the wrong kind of attention. Still, after years on the road, runs like that felt routine. By midnight, the highway was nearly empty. Interstate 40 stretched across the desert like a ribbon of black glass. The moon hung low over the horizon, lighting the sand and scrub just enough to give the landscape a pale glow. Inside the cab, everything felt steady. The engine hummed with the deep diesel rhythm every long-haul driver knows. Tires thumped softly against the pavement, a steady beat that faded into the background after hours behind the wheel. Out there at night, the world narrows. Headlights, lane lines, the endless road ahead. The CB radio occasionally crackled with voices from truckers scattered across the country talking about fuel stops, weather, road construction. Nothing important, just noise that reminded you other drivers were out there. About an hour west of Amarillo, and the CB crackled again. At first it sounded like static. Then a voice cut through clearly. Someone was calling out a red trailer with a blue cab. That got my attention immediately. My rig stood out. Most trucks were plain white or company colors. Mine had a bright red trailer and a deep blue cab that caught the moonlight like polished steel. I picked up the mic. The man's voice sounded rough, like someone who had spent too many years breathing cigarette smoke and desert dust. He said he'd noticed my truck at a fuel stop and complimented the paint job. But the way he said it felt strange, like admiration mixed with something else. The last fuel stop had been nearly an hour earlier, a small station near the state line with flickering lights and a bored attendant watching TV. I hadn't noticed anyone paying attention to me. The conversation stayed casual at first. Then the questions started. He asked if I was running solo. That alone made my grip tighten. Truckers talk about traffic, weather, breakdowns, but asking if someone is alone feels different. I gave a short answer and asked what he needed. The man chuckled quietly through the speaker. He talked about how lonely desert highways could get, how some drivers picked up riders just for company. Something about his tone made the back of my neck prickle. I told him I didn't do that and turned the volume down. For several minutes, the highway returned to its steady rhythm. No voices, no traffic, just the desert wind sliding past the cab. I started convincing myself it had just been a bored driver. Then the CB hissed again. This time he said my name slowly, like he enjoyed saying it. My stomach tightened, and then he mentioned my brand new tires. That detail stopped me cold. Those tires had been installed 2 days earlier in Oklahoma City. The only way someone could know that was if they'd seen them up close. A chill ran through me. I checked both mirrors. The highway behind me looked empty. Just darkness stretching across the desert. When I asked who he was and whether he was following me, he laughed, low and distorted. Then he suggested I pull off at the next exit to talk face to face. My instincts screamed. I refused and pushed the accelerator down. The engine roared as the truck picked up speed. For nearly 20 minutes, nothing happened. No voice, no headlights, just the lonely highway. I started thinking maybe the guy had given up. Then headlights appeared in my mirror, closing fast. A dark sedan came into view, on its lights washing across the back of my trailer. The CB clicked again. The same voice returned, calm and cheerful. He said he could see me clearly. The sedan pulled alongside the trailer and matched my speed. Its windows were blacked out. The car drifted closer, not to hit, just to make a point. He wanted me to pull over. Fear crept in. I'd heard stories from other drivers, cargo thieves scouting truck stops, targeting lone rigs, sometimes forcing trucks off the road. Sometimes it ended worse. The sedan tapped the rear corner of my trailer lightly, just enough to make the rig shudder. The voice on the CB said it would be easier if I pulled off. My pulse hammered. Then I saw a sign ahead. Rest area, 5 miles. If there were lights, cameras, maybe another trucker, I could get out of the darkness. I pressed the accelerator harder. The diesel growled as the truck surged forward. The sedan dropped back briefly, then slammed into the rear bumper. The impact rattled the cab. I gripped the wheel, fighting to keep the truck steady. 2 miles. The sedan stayed right behind me, headlights burning in the mirrors. 1 mile. Then I saw it. Streetlights. The exit ramp appeared. I took it faster than I should have. The trailer swayed. The tires squealed. Seconds later, the rest area came into view. Small, just a few parking spaces and a low restroom building, a vending machine humming beneath a dim light. Another semi was parked at the far end. Its engine idled. I pulled under the lights and stopped. The sedan rolled in behind me. Doors locked with a sharp click as I grabbed the tire iron from beneath the seat. My phone had barely enough signal to dial emergency services. The sedan's driver door opened. A tall figure stepped out. He walked slowly toward my truck, like he had all the time in the world. Dim lights hid his face. He called out calmly, telling me to step out. I shouted back for him to stay away. Then he pulled a very sharp object from his jacket. The blade flashed briefly under the rest area lights. Before anything else happened, a deafening truck horn blasted across the lot. Another semi's engine roared. A massive driver climbed down, shouting and shining a flashlight toward the stranger. Everything changed. The man with the sharp object stopped, looked between the 2 trucks, slid the blade back into his jacket, then turned, climbed into the sedan, and sped out, gravel spraying behind him. The other trucker kept his flashlight trained on the road and asked if I was all right. My heart pounded too hard to answer immediately. Eventually, I explained what had happened. He nodded grimly. There are people out there who hunt truckers like animals. They watch fuel stops, listen on CB channels, look for drivers running alone with valuable cargo. 15 minutes later, a state trooper arrived. I gave a full description of the car and the man. The trooper wrote everything down carefully and said there had already been reports of someone targeting trucks along that stretch. Apparently, I wasn't the first. I finished the run the next day. But that night stayed with me. Ever since then, I pay closer attention to the little things. Who's parked near my truck? Who's talking on the CB? Who might be watching from shadows at a quiet fuel stop? The road can feel peaceful most nights. But sometimes, somewhere between towns and truck stops, someone else is driving those highways for a very different reason. And you never really know who might already be watching. Subscribe to Deep Horror channel for more stories like this.